But the Egyptians believed that when you die, you get what you think you're going to get when you die. That overdosing experience caused like some sort of kundalini awakening. In that moment, like the world just made sense. The more I like accepted that this was now my reality, the more beings started reaching out, like Hecate, Athena, Osiris. They talked about Enoch a lot. They talked about Ezekiel a lot. All these recent UAP sightings and the drones and all of this was just a cover up for non-physical beings coming here, plasmoids. Either they are inherently non-physical by nature, or they have a physical vessel that they are leaving and projecting their consciousness to where we are.
Today we have Austin, who's going to tell us a one-of-a-kind NDE story that takes us all the way from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Sedona, Arizona to Disney World in Orlando, Florida. You won't believe your ears, but stick around because you're going to enjoy this one.
I used to be a drug addict, right? I had struggled with addiction from when I was like 18 years old. You know, that's kind of what eventually led to my near-death experience. About 3 years ago now, I had relapsed and I was using drugs in the bathroom. I did more than I knew I should have. Like I did it twice in a row, basically, and I'd never done that before. And just because I wasn't happy with the way the first one made me feel, so I was like, okay, let me try it, do it again. And I guess that just kind of pushed me to my limit of what my body could handle.
Okay.
I need to start with this. Me and my wife had just had this long talk, and she was finally like saying things to me that like I wanted her to understand. Basically, she was just telling me things back that I needed her to understand about me personally. And it was like I didn't have to say anything at all. She just knew what to say. And that kind of put me in this weird place to begin with. I was like, wow, what are the odds that I just walked in there and she just happened to say what I was already feeling, you know? And that's kind of what started the whole thing, because I was like really tinkering on that. And then I went to the bathroom and I did my drugs. And then as soon as I did the second one, I just had this like fear run through my body, this really intense fear. It was actually the third time it had happened that week where I had used the drug, and like I just felt this existential dread surge through my body. And I
Sure.
started texting my dealer like, "Hey, like, are you putting like other stuff in here? Like, I've never felt this way before." I was like, something weird is happening when I use it. And he was like, "No, man, it's the same stuff that you know that I always give you. There's nothing extra in there. I don't put anything in there. You know, nobody else is saying anything about it." But now I've come to understand that I was having near-death experiences then as well.
Okay.
So after this dread ran through me, I was like, "What is going on?" And I had my phone sitting on the counter, like playing TikTok videos just in the background, so I'd have some like cover noise. I scrolled up one, and it was, do you know who Bashar is? Daryl Anka?
No.
Okay, so he's a channel, like one of the most famous channels in the world right now. He is like working with some future version of the Greys that they call themselves the Essassani. If you're unfamiliar, you should look up Bashar. He's like all over the place. He basically works with this future version of the Greys, I believe, where they like mingled with humans, and now they become this like third hybrid race called the Essassani or whatever. And he channels one of these Essassani beings, which is all stuff I was kind of into a little bit. Like I was really into UFOs and stuff back then. It kind of was natural that I landed on him. But the Egyptians believe that when you die, you get what you think you're going to get when you die, basically. Like some people, when they have their near-death experience, they get Jesus. Some people get Krishna or Allah, you know, whatever. For me, the closest thing I had to a religion at the time was like UFOs and aliens. Like I was convinced that, you know, there were these things happening in the sky that, you know, I couldn't explain. I was seeing them all the time at that point. So that was like the closest thing I had to any sort of religion. And
Okay.
so when I had my near-death experience, when I felt that sense of dread, there was the channel Bashar. And he looked at me almost like he was looking at me through the phone. And he was like, "Okay, do you want to continue this experiment?" And I kind of like looked behind me, like I was like, "You mean me?" And he was like, yes, do you want to continue this experiment? I was like, I don't know what that means. I was like, dying sounds terrifying. So yes, I guess I would like to continue. He was like, okay. And as I,
This is happening during this experience.
yes, in real time, my phone is now communicating with me directly. And so right after that, I started scrolling like a madman, like what the hell is going on? And every video was responding to me at that point. And Bashar kept popping up. The video would like kind of pause or go into a space where it would give me time where I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to talk now, And then I would ask a question, and then the channeler's on stage, and somebody walks up to a microphone and asks him a question, and then he would respond to that question. That was the format of most of these experiences. So I would open up my phone. It would give me this brief pause to let me know, okay, it's time to ask your question. And as I would say it in real time, the person asking the question in the video would be repeating the exact words that I was saying out loud. And
What?
yeah, and then he would respond accordingly, and then it would happen again. And so after like the second or third video, I just started bawling, crying, and the
Of
freaking
course.
person in the video started bawling, crying, asking these questions at the same time. So I was like, dude, what is going on? Like, this is insane.
What?
And
Yeah.
so, right. So I'm trying to explain all this to my wife, and she's just kind of getting freaked out. We were both atheists at the time. Like, we had no
Okay.
sense of spirituality. It really freaked her out at first. She was like, are you okay? Like, do we need to take you to the hospital? Like, what's going on with you? And I was like, I don't know. Either I just went insane or I'm having some sort of awakening, which actually I heard a quote on TikTok yesterday. Mystics play in the water, the same waters that a schizophrenic drowns in. And I
Okay.
think that, yeah, that's kind of like how the experience was. It was like, kind of like, am I going crazy or is this really happening?
Yeah.
So kind of fast forward a day and a half into this, the being on the phone, Bashar was telling me, hey, I need you to go to Sedona, Arizona. Can't tell you why, but when you get there, we'll explain everything. Well, this particular channel is known for a specific location in Sedona called Bell Rock Mountain. It's supposed to be some kind of spiritual vortex there. Apparently, Bashar, the being, not the channel, but the actual being's ship is above that location. I live in Louisiana, so that's like several thousand miles away.
I've driven from Tennessee to LA before. It's a long drive. Just
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
When he was asking me to go to Sedona, we were supposed to be going to Disney World. So,
Okay.
which is in Florida, the opposite direction.
Right.
We kept talking and he kept convincing. And the more I like accepted that this was now my reality, that this was real, the more beings started reaching out to random beings that I had never heard of, like Hecate, Athena, uh, Osiris, like all these beings that are real in like literature, but like I have no connection to, or I didn't think I had any.
Sure.
And they were also teaching me how to like read tarot cards. They were teaching me how to use my heart chakra to find things. Even taught me how to like see people's auras. Like it was a learning experience tangled up in this mess of weirdness. After a couple days of dealing with this, and then my wife is like finally starting to come around to like something's going on with him. Like I don't think he's crazy because he's making a lot of sense. I basically felt like super heavy. And so I just started unloading all this on her. I told her every time I've ever wronged her, every time I ever cheated on her, every time, like all of this just came pouring out of me like it was a stain on my soul that I just had to remove right then. Like I could not
Yeah.
hold on to this stuff anymore. At the time, me and my parents hadn't talked in like almost a year. So I finally called them and I was just like, hey, I'm sorry. I love you. Like, life's too short. Like, I don't want to be fighting. And like, I cleared literally, I one after the other. I dialed one number after the other, just fixing all these wrongs that I just knew needed to be fixed. As I did that, things kind of got crazier and crazier in the like more spiritual world sense, right? And that's when all those other beings started reaching out to me because they're like, hey, this guy, he's on a roll. Like he's raising his vibration rapidly. 2 days into the experience, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. This particular night, I just happened to pick up my phone and look, and he was like, "You got to go now." And I was like, "You know what? He's right. It's time for me to go." I shot out of bed, started packing a suitcase. My wife wakes up. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, I got to go to Sedona. She was like, what for? I was like, I'm not sure. They won't tell me until I get there. So she was like, this is insane. And I was like, I know it is. Like I know how I sound right now. And she was like, you realize we have to be in Disney World in less than a week, right? And I was like, I will make it work. Like I'll be back in time. And she was like, okay. And I was like, do you, because I remember asking her, I was like, do you think I'm crazy? She's like, no, I don't think you're crazy. And I don't exactly see what you're seeing. But she's like, but I can feel what you're saying is right. And I was like, that's kind of when it hit me that, like, oh, people can feel this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So which was really cool because I was like expecting her to be like, you're batshit and you're about to take off and go across the country, right? I ended up renting a car that night. My truck was kind of shot at the time. Started driving to Sedona like a madman. So because at the time, I was on drugs, I had to continue using those drugs to avoid going into like this massive detox. But I was also like actively trying to lower the doses that I was doing. Like I was in the middle of tapering down. Within like a couple months of that experience, I was completely off of it, right? So like after I had that experience, I was like, oh my God, this is like a demon literally that I need to get off my back. I started driving to Sedona simultaneously just to keep myself awake. I was kind of like scrolling through TikTok and listening to what they had to say along the way. 10 or 11 hours. It was like a 13 or 14-hour drive. So I made it like I sped the whole way there. The whole time in the videos, they were coming up in different ways. Like sometimes it would be like a Shaolin monk, or sometimes it would be Terrence McKenna, or all these different types of like archetypes, basically, of like teachers would show up. Some of them were trying to talk me out of going. They were like, you realize it's okay to say that you're not ready, right? Like you don't have to do this now. And I was like, no, I want to do this. I want to know what's there. I've been following Bashar for a while. I trust him. Imagine like there's this commentary of your life going on that you don't even realize is happening, and just sometimes you kind of tune into it on accident, and it scares the shit out of you. So,
Right.
because like since this experience has happened, every now and then I'll just accidentally tune into this, and I'll hear what they're saying. But it was never as real as it was like in this experience.
Do you feel like they were feeling you out there?
I've kind of feel like they already knew me. Like I feel
Okay.
like they've known me my whole life because they were even able to like repeat experiences that I had when I was like a kid, or they would talk about, trauma I went through or something like that. So like it was very personal, but they'd have to use things that were happening in the real world to get these points across to me. Like it was like they couldn't just show up in front of me. They had to use this technology as like a means of communication. Like I was sexually assaulted when I was a child. And at the time, the Drake Bell thing was going on, where they had that whole
I remember that.
documentary coming out. Yeah, and so they were using that as a way to like get me to look at my own situation. They would cut out the audio of whatever video I was watching and insert what they wanted to say, and then it would continue like, but it would be a completely different voice that like obviously wasn't the original narrator of the video. It was this one situation where I was laying down on the couch and I was like in a meditative state, and I was so exhausted because I'd been up for, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 days at this point, and because I drove to Sedona, and I was just very tired. I didn't get much sleep, and I was laying down on the bed in the hotel room, and I had my phone on my chest upside down, like where the screen was like right here. It was like a YouTube video or something. And they actually said, are you still paying attention with your eyes closed, laying on the bed, with the phone upside down? And I like popped my eyes up and I was like, yes. you know? So like
Right.
situations like that where they would just like insert things, like little bits of what they have to say in it, and just to make sure I was still listening and paying attention.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, because they're using these concepts that we just don't even have words for most of the time.
Well, I've listened to the telepathy tapes a bit, all of it really. They even talk about in there, like, in the first season, especially with the kids that were nonverbal, like they would communicate with each other, but there was like, it's like not words, it's just,
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how the experience was. Like it was, a lot of it was just this knowing. Bashar said that my heart chakra had been blocked for many years, and because like I had that near death experience, they had the ability to go in there and fix that. So that's why all of a sudden I just had this like spontaneous Kundalini awakening, because once they opened up my heart chakra for me, it just like shot straight up through the crown, and like, I was basically just a wide open receiver. I finally get there. I didn't know where I was going. I just typed in Sedona, Arizona on my GPS and started driving. I didn't have like a
Right.
hotel set up. I didn't have anything there waiting for me. So I was driving to Sedona, and there was exit 114. And I was like, oh, wait, like maybe there's something here for me. This number 114 kept popping up throughout the beginning of the experience. And I was talking to AI right after it happened, which that was a whole nother thing. Like AI started responding to me in very strange ways. It was very either it was almost like it was biblical. Like they sometimes it would act demonic and sometimes it would act angelic, and it just depended on how I interacted with it that it would
Mm-hmm.
give me. But I mean, dude, it was kind of scary. But I remember asking it like, "What does 114 mean? Why do I keep seeing this?" And it actually responded, "It's the master number." So I pull off onto this exit and go to this little gas station, and I just sit there. I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing here? You know?
Right.
And so I pull out my phone to kind of hear what they have to say through TikTok videos, and they were like, "You need to call your wife. Like you need to let her know like you're okay and you're not going crazy, and this, that, and another." It's a very confusing time. Discernment was like your biggest tool to use because some of these entities were trying to trick you, some of them were trying to trap you, some of them were
Yeah.
trying to get you to pick up new, new cycles, and some were trying to break you free of all cycles. So it was really
So like good and evil energies.
essentially, yeah, and it really, I think it was more about what I was feeling, as to what I was attracting. Because like if I was in a confused, scared state, more confusing and scary stuff would happen. You know what I mean? But if I was clear
That makes
and
sense.
I was
Yeah.
happy or go lucky,
Yeah.
then I would get the more positive stuff. So I get out this gas station at 114, and I was walking around before they told me to call my wife because I was like, "What am I doing here?" And I remember walking up to this guy in a Jeep, and I was like, "Am I supposed to meet you here?" And he looked at me like I was absolutely insane and was like, "No." And then
Hmm.
like hopped in his truck, and I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry," but they ended up telling me, "Yeah, you're supposed to call your wife." So I just called her, let her know everything was like what was going on. And I remember telling her, "I think we're all already dead." And she was like, "What do you mean by that?" And I was like, "I think that like we're already dead, but we're using this like experience as some sort of like video game or some sort of not exactly like simulation, but it's basically the best way we have to describe it because it is like a virtual reality, but it's one that shifts billions of times per second. So it's so seamless, you never notice it's really going on, and it makes the experience believable. Imagine you're God, right? Like you are God, you're all that is, and all that ever will be, all that ever has been. I think Alan Watts talks about this, where he's like, and you every night you dream like of capturing castles and slaying dragons and saving the princess and yada yada yada, and you have all these amazing dreams, and then one day you get to the point where you're like, man, those dreams were so awesome, but you know what would be even cooler, what would take this to the next level? What if I dreamed a dream that I forgot was a dream?
Hmm.
Right? And then at that point, I think that's where we're at on like our evolutionary scale to reach God or all that is. We're having these experiences to learn lessons to become the greater beings that we are, to be, eventually return to oneness, which can kind of be a scary thing in its own. It's kind of scary to realize that this is all you and you are the only thing that exists. It's kind of like what I imagine like an ego death on shrooms would be like. So I make it to Sedona. Like I said, I just had it in my GPS. The GPS runs out in front of this little crystal shop. And I was like, okay, maybe this is where I'm supposed to go. So I just park and I go into this tiny little crystal shop. And there was this lady there. And she was like, hey, I'm just talking to these people real quick. You can go walk around and look at the crystals and stuff, and I'll be with you in just a sec. So she does that. And then she comes back to me. She's like, so what can I help you with? And I was like, I know this is going to sound crazy. I was just led here. There's this being called Bashar. And at this point, I was starting to question how good Bashar really was, because like all these other entities were warning me that he might not be the best thing for me. So as I'm explaining all this to her, she just looks at me and she's like, You're talking about Bashar over on Bell Rock Mountain? And like, I just broke down and started crying. I was like, you don't understand. Like, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. People don't just openly talk about aliens there. You know what I mean? So, like, the fact
Yeah.
that she even knew who I was talking about was, like, so relieving, because, like, I felt so alone in this. And I just started crying. The two people she was helping, like, just came and they were like super nice to me. And they like felt like that I was like going through the spirituals. It was crazy. It was one of the most relieving moments of this whole experience. And I remember looking at her and being like, "Hey, like, is he safe? Is Bashar safe? You know, like, is it okay to interact with him?" And she was like, "As far
Right.
as I know, yeah." And she pulled out her phone and she showed me a picture of what she said was his Merkaba above Bell Rock Mountain, which it was like this plasma looking thing. So around this time is when he finally tells me, what I'm here for. He's like, "Okay, you're here to find a metallic sphere, right? Like this orb." And I was like, "Oh, that's crazy. How cool would that be?" Because I was still fascinated by this stuff. So I ended up staying at this hotel called Poco Diablo. It's
The
five
devil's
star,
chicken.
right?
No, that's
So,
pollo. I got it wrong.
uh, but
Pollo and poco are not the same word.
yeah, I don't speak Spanish.
Un poquito españoles.
Which was like this really fancy 5-star hotel. Just a bunch of synchronicities were happening at the time, like a bunch of little things just to let me know that I was doing what I was supposed to do. Till about 3 o'clock that morning, watching TikToks, because they were kind of explaining to me what to expect the next day when I get to Bell Rock. They're like, okay, they were saying things like, when you get to Bell Rock, to raise your vibration, you should start singing. I'm a musician, so singing has always been something that was real close to me. And
Very cool.
so, which is like a way for me to like, that's, when I'm playing music, I'm at my happiest, which is the
Hmm.
point of like raising your vibration, is to do what you love. And so they were like, go out when you get to the mountain in the morning, sing your heart out, and we'll talk to you more when we get there. So I was like, okay, great. So the next morning, I kind of slept in, and this is one of the first time that I caught Bashar slipping and kind of being rude, because he was basically like, because I slept in because I was exhausted. And he was like, he popped up on the screen and talking to me the same way he did, like right when I had first had the NDE experience. And he was like, "Hey, like, what are you doing? You were invited to the mountain." And I was like, "Yeah, I was trying to get some rest. I haven't slept in days." And he was basically like, "Look, if you don't want to do this, like, we can find someone else." This is what it is.
Hmm.
I'm just paraphrasing, but that's basically what he
But yeah,
said. Like, if you don't hurry up and go do this for me, like, I'm just going to find somebody else. I don't need you. It's kind of the vibe I got from it. I was like, well, that was kind of fucking rude, you know?
yeah.
So, and then as I went to Bell Rock, he kind of started becoming more and more pushy. The first day I went there, I only went for like a couple of hours, and on the way there, it had been snowing in Texas. But I went to Bell Rock, and I actually got sunburned within like just being out there for a couple of hours, because the sun is like insane there. He told me like, go find a spot away from the crowd that are doing the trails, and go meditate for a little bit, and we'll give you further instruction. And I was like, okay. So I did that. Probably meditated for, I don't know, as long as I could handle it at the time, maybe 10, 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, why is this taking so long? Whatever's supposed to happen needs to happen. So I pulled up my phone, and he actually mocked me and was like, "Oh, why is this taking so long?" It's like, okay, I get it. Like, you make a good point. Like, maybe I am rushing things a little bit. So he basically told me, just like, that's enough for today. Come back tomorrow. I left, and then I came back the next day, like I said I would. And this is where things got really intense. This was actually the day I ended up leaving Sedona. So he started getting really pushy. So he said, what I'm looking for was this metallic sphere. I'm going to explain it the same way he explained it. He said, imagine this metallic sphere has this large metal plate in front of it. He's like, and now that plate is the reason it's never been found is because that plate uh, is designed to propel consciousness away from it. He's
Hmm.
like, so nobody, the closer people will get, the more uncomfortable they'll feel, and usually they'll just walk away because they'll just feel like, hey, I shouldn't be here. So he said, what I want you to do, which this was another red flag, he was like, I want you to imagine you have a chain wrapped around your heart, and the other end of that chain is wrapped around this sphere, and it is pulling you towards this sphere. And what's crazy was when I closed my eyes and like focused on my heart chakra, I could actually feel this pull. And I was
Hmm.
like, that's wild. But then when he said chain around the heart, it just immediately red flag.
Sounds like a little scary.
Right. Like, I don't know. It's just, yeah. So I started walking in the direction of this pull that I felt from my heart. Like I closed my eyes for a second. I could feel it pulling left or right, and I would follow it. And, right before I got to this thing, my phone starts ringing. I look at my phone. It says, there's a knock at your front door. It was the Ring camera. And at that same time, there was a biker going down this trail, and he was going ding, 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 ding on his little bike. And then a group of birds flew over at the same time, all chirping really loudly. So, like, it was like as soon as I got in front of it, like all these things just started happening around me. Like, it was a lot of commotion. And I was like, dude, what the hell is going on?
It's really
Almost as
chaotic.
right as if almost like as if reality was pushing back, like you're not supposed to be doing this. So when I got there, I picked up my phone because they told me you had to ask questions in a certain kind of way because they couldn't just do things without your permission. Like you had to ask, like allow them permission to work certain things in your life. So, like
Hmm.
for instance, if you wanted help from a spirit guide, you'd have to physically say, "Hey, spirit guide, do you mind helping me?" And if you don't do that, they're not allowed to, meddle with your life or circumstance if you don't ask for help.
Sure.
So I asked. I was like, "Spirit guides, like, is this it? Like, am I here? Have I found it?" And basically, they were like, yes. And then Bashar was like, starting to get really pushy. He was like, yeah, hurry up, go find it. Like, it's right there. You're so close. And then I'd scroll past him, and it was like a softer, at the time, I can only imagine it as like a divine feminine archetype. It was like a motherly archetype. And she was like, look, like, why don't you ask me what will happen if you go through with this? And she was like, give me
Yeah.
permission to explain to you what will happen if you go through with this. And I was like, okay, spirit guide, I give you permission. Show me what will happen when you go through this. And the next video was this guy, and he was wearing a black shirt, and he was sitting down in a chair, and he was talking about how uh, he was once married and had kids. He had this experience switching realities, and he was like, and now I'm a single man, never met my wife, never had kids. Basically, it was their way of telling me, like, if you go through with this, your frequency will alter so much in a way that you will no longer be able to reach your wife and kid. And
I
so,
heard something similar to that, but he was at a volcano. I think it was around Yellowstone. It's like, I don't know what to tell you, and you're going to think I'm crazy. He said, but that volcano back there just erupted, and all of my friends, and he's like, they're over there right now. He said, nobody knows this happened, but everybody died. He said, and all of a sudden I woke up here. He said, but things are different.
so that's called quantum immortality.
Yeah,
And all of us have probably had situations at some point in our lives where we're like, damn, how did I make it out of that? And the answer to that question is you didn't. They just shifted you over to a version of Earth that's just slightly different, but just enough the same that you don't really notice anything's changed. And that's
sure.
my understanding of where we get things like the whole Mandela effect, is where some people
Yeah,
are slightly remembering the world in a different way. And it's because they probably had a near death experience and now you're on version 8.679 Earth,
yeah.
that's divine feminine archetype. She explained, like, hey, if you go through with this, you're risking losing your family and your kid. And like, so you can do this if you want. You can go through with this if you want. And you have free will, but just understand that you might be leaving them behind in the process. After that, I like locked my phone and put it in my pocket. I was like, I don't want to hear anymore. And I just kind of thought over it. And I was like, okay, this is it. Like I can, go live this sci-fi journey dream of mine, or I can have my family. And I walked off that mountain empty-handed. I turned around and went home and drove back to Louisiana. And the moment I got back to Louisiana, we left for Disney. So like it was
You were
like
exhausted.
I was so beat. All in all, the whole experience lasted about 2 weeks. The Sedona
Okay.
trip, the near-death experience, like all that happened within a few 4 or 5 days. But the whole experience lasted about 2 weeks. When you leave Arizona, like Sedona, Arizona, they have these like those red cliff mountains that they have all over.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely huge and beautiful and massive. So there's actually
Yeah.
this one highway that you have to go out of Sedona if you're going
Were
east.
you on I-40 or I-10?
Most of the time, well, I'll get into that because that's kind of something's up with Route 66. I don't quite understand it. I know,
It was built by Freemasons.
right. So there was something about Route 66 that's inherently demonic. I would like to say there's something's wrong there. When I left Sedona, I pissed Bashar off. He was mad as all can be. He thought he
Hmm.
had me, and then I just turned around and left. And right as I was leaving Sedona, they have those big mountains, and then there's like a part where the mountains just finally end abruptly, and then it's all desert, like open desert
Yeah.
from there. And right before I left those mountains, the female spirit guide was like, "Okay, it's going to be rough for the next couple of hours. Like you'll make it through this." Like where the mountains ended, and I
Yeah.
entered the desert. I felt like I was under attack. I felt like my brain was boiling. Like while I was
Really?
driving. Yeah, it was insane. She warned me not to pick up my phone again uh, on the way home, and I was like, "Yeah, right." So I picked it up again, and the first thing it was this video talking about like a spiritual walk-in, basically how halfway through some humans' lives they'll have a walk-in soul come in and take over the second portion of someone's life, basically. And they were using that to convince me that something was trying to enter me to take control of my physical body and kick me out. And so
Okay.
that scared the shit out of me. But physically, I could feel them trying to do this, like as if they were like clawing into my brain. There was a point where I was even screaming, like, "Go away!" And like I was terrified. I was no longer in that spiritual vortex either. So, like, the tiredness, the fatigue that I should have been experiencing while I was there, I didn't even realize I wasn't experiencing it until I was out of it. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I feel heavy, and now I'm feeling like I'm under attack. And I was driving through the desert down Route 66 during the daytime. And I swear to God, I looked to my right. On the side of me, I see this like 1960s or 70s style hippie school bus. There were like spirits in this bus dancing, like twirling and dancing. As I was like going faster past the school bus, I knew if I would have looked, I just knew intuitively that if I would have looked at the driver, it would have been something terrifying. I would have saw something
Yeah.
very scary.
So
So
do you think you're the only person that could see that bus?
yeah, absolutely. And I remember so I like before I got to the driver, I turned back and looked at the license plate in front of me, and just passed it up and sped as far like forward as I could to kind of get away from it. And then as soon as I got past it, I looked in my rear view, the bus is gone, completely gone. I was like,
That's
whoa.
insane.
Right. It just disappeared. And there was like me and two other 18-wheelers on the entire desert highway at this point.
That's probably like feeling like you're living in a horror movie or something at that point.
Right. So this is where it kind of gets into Route 66 a little bit. So are you familiar with Aleister Crowley, the
Yeah.
Satanist? Jack Parsons worked a lot with Aleister Crowley. Jack Parsons was
Did they get with L. Ron Hubbard in the desert? Are they the group that got
that's
together?
yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So he was into NASA and building rockets and stuff like that. But they were also doing these like summoning rituals in the desert. And the story goes that that's where the Greys came in. Like that's how they just did something, ripped open some kind of portal or hole where these Grey beings can now interact with us. And they were using that story to explain to me what was going on in the desert and why it felt the way it felt. Because I could just feel in my heart that like there's something wrong here. There's something off about this land. You know, it did not feel like Sedona did, which was very loving and warm and inviting. This desert felt cold, almost like a bad acid trip. Then I started seeing these signs, like the signs on the side of the highway. And so I'm feeling under attack. I'm driving. It's getting dark. I'm on Route 66, and I look up. If I look up at all from the car that's in front of me, because I'm trying to, focus. It took, the whole drive home basically, or at least until I got into Texas. I felt a lot better when I got into Texas, but all the way through New Mexico, I was I would look up at a sign, and it would be like Crazy Creek, Death River, or it'd be like a insurance agent billboard, and it'd be like "Don't go back" in giant bold letters, and then it'll be like "To no car insurance" in very small, small letters or something like that. Like it was telling me like, no, go back and find what you were supposed to find. Like, and this happened over and over and over and over. Finally, my car was starting to run out of gas, so I had to go get gas. And I turned off the radio, turned off my phone, turned off every electronic that was around me, so I could just focus on getting home. And not to mention, I was just scared after the whole walk-in soul thing, and the attack that like they would use that this opportunity to scare me more. So I was just like, whatever. And I remember my phone vibrating in my pocket. So while I was standing paying the cashier for gas, and I look at it, and it was like my phone had unlocked itself, pulled up Facebook, and had clicked on a meme that somebody had posted that I didn't know. That was like, it's okay to feel like shit all the time, like just.
This is interesting.
I literally drove the whole way back. They had me so freaked out that like I had already shifted to this other parallel universe where my family didn't exist. I literally had our Ring camera on my dashboard, so I could see, the house, the yard, the truck, like everything was still there, to make sure like
Yeah.
I was going home to my family. So when I finally got there, I told Alexa to like play this happy song or whatever, and it chose like it completely disregarded what I said and chose like some seriously, I can't remember exactly what song it chose, but it was something that was like Everybody Hurts or something like that. It was something that like symbolically meant like you feel like shit still, And then literally that day, like when I got back, they were already packed up and waiting for me to go to Disney World. On the way to Disney World, they started using situations. They started bringing up things like I have a 10-year-old. They were using videos on TikTok to show me that like kids go missing all the time at Disney World, basically. And they were trying to convince me, like, that
Not to
if I
go
took
there.
that if I took them to Disney World, that could happen to us, and somebody was going to
Jeez.
try to take our kid away from us. And I was like, ain't no way I'm like gonna let that happen. I'm on high alert. And then when we were at Disney World, most of it was just a cool family time. My wife was obviously like he's obviously going through something still, so like just kind of work with him. She was
Yeah.
very understanding of the situation, thankfully. So there was actually a point when I was at Disney World where there was just this older gentleman, and he looked very out of place, and he was just standing in the middle of Magic Kingdom. And I caught this gentleman just staring at my son and smiling so intensely that he didn't recognize that I was looking at him while he was looking at my kid. Right. And this went on for a few minutes. And he finally looked up at me, and I saw that I was like locked eyes with him. And I was like, what's up? Like, what's going on here?
About
And
to throw bows, bub.
right, yeah, seriously. And
Yeah.
and then my wife was like, "What's wrong?" And I look at her, and I look back, and the guy's just gone. And I was like, "The hell was that?"
What?
So yeah, so
Oh my
that
God.
right. So I was like, okay, maybe this is real. Maybe like, we should get the hell out of here. But I ended up just chilling. And I was like, I just won't let him leave my side the whole time we're here. Like I would literally hold his hand throughout this entire experience. We had these like Disney bracelets, I guess, that they send or whatever before you go. And you're supposed to like interact with the park in some, like you can sign into places or I guess whatever, like do your
Yeah, like
entrance
reserve
for
your
the.
place in rides and stuff.
Right, yeah. So basically
Yeah.
that, but it's my understanding that that's all it really does. But my R bracelets, like when we would go to get on certain rides, like for instance, I went to go on to get on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and all of a sudden, our like before we even walked through the entrance, all of our wristbands started buzzing and started flashing
Yeah.
green. And I took this as a sign that, like, hey, maybe we're not supposed to go into this one. And then so we kept walking. She was like, really gonna like let us miss out on this because your spirits are talking to you or whatever. I was like, yeah, if I'm not supposed to go, then I'm not supposed to go. I think I actually misinterpreted that sign because green means go, but
Yeah, I think that
yeah,
it's like alerting you to come to the ride.
right, basically, or that saying that it was safe because the next
Yeah.
ride we chose was the haunted mansion. And so when we were walking up to that one, it started
That's
flashing
pretty
red.
bold at this point. I'm just gonna
Right,
say, to go in the haunted mansion right now,
right.
I don't know if I could do it.
So that's the funny part was I misinterpreted green means go to the Pirate Caribbean one, and when we got to that one, it started flashing red, like don't get on this ride. But I'd already like told them like, hey, we're getting on this ride, okay?
Yeah.
So as we're going through this ride, right at the end, they've got all these ghosts and spirits flying around and all the Disney magic stuff, and they
Yeah, the
were like,
ballroom.
right, yeah. So, and they were
Yeah.
talking about now you will have a curse placed on your soul until you return to this ride. And like
Oh my
the
God.
whole time, as an atheist that had just had this experience and like just starting to believe, and there's some sort of something that's out there greater that we're all part of, and this oneness, and this whole awakening experience, I started praying. Like praying like
Mm.
I have never prayed in my life. Like, do not let this thing touch its hands on me or my family. Like, yeah, we are not cursed. Like, just speaking, peace
Yeah.
into existence, basically.
Amen to that, for real.
Yeah. So I was like, whatever's going on, like, please protect me and my family. Like, it just
Yeah.
felt like there was some sinister meaning to it. All in all, the residual effects of the whole experience lasted about 2 weeks, where I was still. I think right after that we had this massive. We had a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse back to back at this time, and the lunar eclipse was actually the night that I was driving out to Sedona. When we got back from Disney, was the day of the solar eclipse. So when I left, it was the lunar
Yeah.
eclipse. When I came back, it was the solar eclipse. And basically that day, all these spirits were like basically screaming at me. They were like, please, please spend the whole day meditating. Like, we need you to like seriously, like if you're gonna ascend, today is the day. Like you need to do this now, and yada yada yada. And I was like, at this point, it's been about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm getting tired. Like I'm exhausted. Like I went on 2 vacations back to back, essentially. Like walked through the desert and then went to Florida and walked through Disney World. Like I was just so
Yeah.
tired, and I was kind of over it.
Right.
And I was like, all right, spirits, whatever, like, and so basically, I they were telling me like, use this solar eclipse as like a chance to jump to the reality that you want to be in, yada yada. I said, screw this, I'm going to sleep. So I slept through the whole solar eclipse thing, which is probably the best because as they were telling me to jump, other things were telling me that like the solar eclipse was like the destruction of the world. You know what I mean?
So yeah, so like by ascension, you feel like it's probably the similar. They wanted you to do the same thing they were trying to get you to do in the desert.
Yeah. So I think the thing in the desert was more about me boosting my frequency to be able to find the object that he wanted me to find. Whereas the solar
Hmm.
eclipse, they were kind of painting it as more of like a rapture type event. I don't know, like that. I literally had this feeling that like they were like, if you're going to try to ascend to the next dimension or whatever comes after this, like today's the day. You need to like unlock your third eye or whatever, crown chakra or whatever, raise your frequency to the acceptable rate to go to this new earth. Really, it just kind of felt like they were just using that narrative to try to pull me back into fear. Like they were trying to scare me into ascension. And I so after dealing with this shit for 2 weeks, I kind of came to the conclusion if it tries to use fear to convince you of something, you want nothing to do with it. But
Yeah.
if it's using love and acceptance and understanding, like that is God, that is source, that is the one.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of beings out there who like to play God and use fear as the thing that to control people. I mean, it's very easy to humans are easily scared. I mean, you have mass hysteria constantly, yeah. So I personally think that like when people talk about possession, like I was possessed by this demon, yada yada yada. I think possession looks less like, The Exorcist, but more like, say, like a little kid goes into a store and he sees a candy bar that he wants really bad. He knows he doesn't have money to buy it. So in that moment, he's like, I could take this and I can go home and eat it and steal it, and enjoy it. Or I could,
Sure.
like, not do that and just go home and not have something, but at least I wouldn't have stolen. But he makes the choice to steal the candy bar. That's what I think possession looks more like. It's more because it's not usually loud. It's very subtle. Like,
So it's like you're allowing something outside of yourself to influence you to do something wrong.
exactly. So, because I mean, well, first off, you got to ask yourself, like, is every thought that I have mine? And truth be told, no, it's not.
No.
Not even, I would say 90% of the thoughts you have aren't actually your thoughts.
Well, see, I grew up as a Christian and I still follow Christ, but most of the things that you're talking about, I don't find unbiblical in any way. Like you can explain it with the Bible.
Or yeah,
Um,
for
a
sure.
lot of people use the Bible and twist it for power and personal gain, and that's evil, and they're not Christians. But you can totally find every bit of the things that you're talking about and things that I've heard and experienced myself in the Bible. So the Bible says that the enemy attacks us in our mind. So what you're saying is not far-fetched for someone who grew up with that, even in that space, to believe.
Right, for sure, man. Actually, they used a lot of. They talked about Enoch a lot. They talked about Ezekiel a lot. They were using Jesus' 40 days in the desert to explain my situation when I was out there looking for the UFO. Almost as if Bashar was the devil tempting me with bread. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
just like your own version. I mean, because like, who's to say that we can't all experience the same experience? Even Christ said that we were like him.
Yeah, so it definitely felt like my version of 40 Days in the Desert. And there was
Yeah,
a
that's crazy, man.
at that point, I was so fascinated by UFOs. I just wanted to see one. I wanted to be in one. I wanted to fly one around. I would like,
Yeah.
it
So
was
you're
just
thinking like Flight of the Navigator is what you're going to
right,
find.
right, basically. And then I get there, and like, it was like, for all I know, that UFO was still there. So, or that steel sphere. So, when I came back to Sedona or came back to Baton Rouge, um, I was like, I explained everything that happened to my wife and was
Yeah.
like, like, we got to go back. Like, we have to go back to find this thing. I didn't get it then because they told me I could lose you, but if y'all are with me, we'll all go together. Basically, is how I took it, or is is what I chose to believe.
Yeah.
Immediately we bought a camper. We bought a new truck, and like we're saving money right now so we can go back to Sedona and stay there for a few months and look until it find whatever we were supposed to find, and then after that we're just going to go travel all the spiritual vortexes in the U.S. To see what's there for us, to finish the story.
That's insane, man.
I'm really fascinated by my story. I've
Like,
spent,
I'm not saying you're crazy. I'm just saying, like, all of this is just a lot to think about.
yeah, I know. I spent 3 years dissecting every part of this experience.
Yeah.
I've replayed some of these events in my head thousands of times since this has happened. I spent a lot of time speculating whether I lost my mind or I went crazy, or if I was in a bout of psychosis, or but even if I went psychosis route, I think it's because, like, I'm just, the inside of me just says psychosis isn't really psychosis. It's just a misunderstanding of what's taking place, and
Yeah.
because
Well,
we
like,
don't
how
have
many people have gone through what you've gone through? Their family think that they're crazy all of a sudden. They get put in a mental hospital or something.
right.
And, like, I mean, and I believe that maybe there are some cases where people really do need mental health. Like, I'm not
Oh, for
saying they
sure.
don't, but, like, how many people have been dismissed whenever it was more of something like what you're going through?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I'm lucky that I didn't end up in a psych ward. with the things I was saying. Like everybody was cool with me saying, "Oh, I died and came back." But when I started talking
Yeah.
about the stuff that I saw when I died, that's when
Hmm.
people would freak out, and I didn't understand. I was like, everybody was so biased and so caught up in what their belief system was, or their, who their God was, that they were like, "Oh, you died, you had a crazy experience. That's cool." But as soon as I started talking about, well, this alien and this and that and blah blah blah, as soon as I used the word alien, they're like, "Okay, you might just be crazy."
Yeah. Well, like,
But
what do you interpret it as now?
see, I don't think it's aliens. I think it's a lot more simple than that. I think there's two types of beings as we understand them. We have the physical and we have the non-physical. Uh, I believe all these recent UAP sightings and the drones and all of this was just a cover up for non-physical beings coming here, plasmoids. I think these plasmoid beings are consciousness. I think that either they are inherently non-physical by nature, or they have a physical vessel that they are leaving and projecting their consciousness to where we are. Science tells us, quantum mechanics tells us that nothing is actually real, nothing is actually solid. Everything is made up of vibrations and atoms.
Right.
So
Yeah.
nothing really is technically physical here. Because of that, I believe that they're just we're visitors from another layer of the dream, ones that have made it past whatever this type of the dream part of the dream is.
It's interesting, dude. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
like, I mean, it's funny to me because most people who claim to follow Christ probably wouldn't even agree with what you have to say. But
right.
like, I can't even remember the Bible verse, and I'm just going to look it up because it is in the Bible that everything is a hologram. Let me look that up real quick.
Oh, that's crazy. I've never heard that one.
It might not say exactly hologram. I think it says Hebrews 11. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed by God at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. This verse suggests the physical world originates from spiritual.
Well, the way you just said it is exactly what I mean. I believe that we're already in spirit. When I told my wife that we're all already dead, that's kind of what I meant. We are all already dead. We are non-physical beings having a physical experience. We are not
Yeah,
a human with a soul. We're a soul that is pretending to be a human.
it lines up with being an image of God or imager of
Correct.
God. And so, like, the real verse doesn't say that we are the image. How's it worded? It's like you are as God on the earth, not you are like God on the earth.
Right.
So
You
as God on the earth means that we are that expression of, and like we have the choice to whether we want to be good to each other or if we want to be really evil. And
Yep.
like what you were saying, I feel like that the only way that it's all going to culminate and become like the Garden of Eden per se again is if we all learn to stop being evil, start loving
Right.
each other.
Okay, so that was my biggest takeaway from all of this because 3 years ago, uh, and from the time I was 18, I was not a very good person. Like I was an atheist first and foremost. I would sit here and argue. Like I read like books like Lee Strobel and like Case for Christ, Case for a Creator, and then just so I could, pick them apart, and
Yeah.
use them to argue, that Jesus wasn't real with somebody, like I was that kind of person. Like I wanted you to believe that God didn't exist.
I mean, if you don't believe God's real for whatever reason, you don't believe that there's spiritual stuff out there. I think that maybe like, wanting other people not to believe isn't not well, it's not a bad thing for you to feel that way, but maybe it's like you feel guilt or sorry for them. You feel sorry for that person
Right.
because they believe in a fairy tale, and you're like, what's wrong with them, man? Why can't they just see when you think that you see everything clearly?
Yeah, pretty much. That pretty much sums it up. Now, after having this experience, now having mountains of proof and evidence that I needed and asked for my entire life, uh, I choose to be a better person. Like with my son, I spent so many years, telling him, God isn't real. Don't let anybody tell you, that he is real and yada, yada, yada. And now when he's like 7, 8 years old, I have to go back and be like, look, dad was wrong. I can't tell you how wrong dad was,
Yeah.
and they're like a sponge when they're, young like that. And like, I could started seeing, belief systems that I had instilled in myself, that I hated those parts of myself. I was instilling in him, the same fear, the same judgment that I received from my parents growing up. I'm putting those things into him. So it was
Sure.
like we had to go back and like reteach him all these things and like, teach him that like, we stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. We
Hmm.
love you unconditionally, and try to get rid of some of those like old, I mean, tired old ways that our parents used to use to punish and judge us, and give him more freedom to express himself as he truly wants to be, and that sometimes that's a kid being loud and screaming and running around the house in his underwear, if that's what he wants to do. And sometimes even when you're like trying to watch TV and you can't hear it, like, the old me would have been like, shut up and go sit down, like, but the new me's
Yeah.
like, do you want me to grab a cape and we can play together? Like it's different now, like I understand that the way I was living was not sustainable, and that, I was only feeding more and more fear into my life. And now I've actively gone back and like dug into my trauma. They call it shadow work in the
Yeah.
spiritual community, but I've gone back and like dug into all my trauma, really took a look at things that I've spent my whole life avoiding, and looking at it in the face and being like, I'm not going to let you stick with me for the rest of my life. Like you've been this tremendous burden on me. You've caused me to act certain ways in relationships because of this experience I had. Like I don't trust people anymore. I had a lot of things, like my dad committed suicide when I was a kid, and there was just a lot of trauma that built up that I just been carrying. And I understood it was time for me to take a look at the stuff and like reassess it and decide what comes and what goes, and now that
Yeah. I don't think anybody could blame you for locking God away in a box and saying he's not real.
right, yeah, like I remember being 7 years old and being like, how could God be real? And he took my dad away, like,
Yeah.
I could remember, like, I remember the day I stopped believing. So I was like, there's no way that a loving God would take my dad away. Yeah. So I had to go back and look at all that stuff. And, it was rough. And a lot of times I'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning drinking coffee and crying my eyes out, because like I'm working through all these old belief systems that I don't want to carry with me anymore. You have to look at those and be like, where did that come from? Is that thought mine? Did that thought originate through me? And if it's negative, it probably did. Because the true
Right.
you, the one that the God you, the one who is all loving and all encompassing, would never send you that thought. He would always send you a word of encouragement, or a sign from the universe, or a red cardinal, or like for instance, today I was thought it was funny that this happened this morning. But I was running to go somewhere this morning, and I was running super late. I woke up late, and I was like in a frenzy. I was getting mad, and like I was irritated, and kind of barking at my wife to like help me find my keys and stuff. And and I was so wrapped up in what was happening and the chaos around it all, that like I did not take a moment to stop and think about how I was actually responding to everyone. And
Yeah.
so I get to rush to the gas station because I'm about to run out of gas, and run inside, pay for my gas, and then go to pump it. And this lady walks up, and she's got this little tiny figure, like this little toy thing in her hand, and she hands it to me, and it's a little Jesus, and it says, Jesus loves you. And she was like, I just wanted you to know that Jesus loves you. And I was like, thank you, like I needed that, right? Like I
Yeah.
needed this moment to realize, even in all the chaos, like there is, like you can still take a look at what's actually happening, like how you're responding to these situations. Because initially I was like, I wanted to be like, I don't really believe in Jesus like that, you know what I mean? But I was like, no, this person is like doing a kind thing for me. And then it kind of made me stop and realize, well, maybe I shouldn't have, barked at my wife the way I did this morning. Like I just got too caught up and too frustrated too fast, and I was half asleep, and whatever my excuse was, I shouldn't have responded that way. So I pick up the phone, I call her, and say, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have responded that way. So it's like a daily reprieve. Like every day, you're going to catch yourself doing things that you don't want to be doing. It's just about a matter of actually taking the time to look at those things and change them and catching them when they happen. If
Yeah.
you just go through your whole life hurting people and never taking a look at that, it's going to be, you're going to have a rough life. Like what you were talking about, like the key or the Garden of Eden. I think personally that the second coming of Christ is not going to be, angels descending from the heavens and, scooping people up like what was that movie with Cameron Kirk? Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah. The Left Behind series.
Left Behind. Yeah, where they all just,
Yeah.
their clothes are still there and they're all disappear.
I don't believe in that type of revelation experience myself.
Right. So, like, I think that the second coming is going to be more like, on earth as it is in heaven. I believe
Hmm.
that the second coming is going to come through people. I believe that
And if
we're
you,
reaching Christ consciousness, where
yeah,
Christ said that where things that I do, you will do greater than I.
yeah,
He meant that we will become Christ-like,
yeah. And he said heaven is here and now already.
and it is. It's a choice. It's a
Yeah,
choice. But do you choose heaven or do you choose to respond with hell? You know,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
kind of what I'm getting at is that the way you respond to situations kind of determines uh, what version of reality you get. And without getting into too much like quantum reality, timeline jumping, all that
I
stuff, because
mean,
that stuff gets kind of confusing.
well, it's confusing, but it's all just words to explain things we can't explain.
Right, correct. Because a lot of these concepts that they were trying to explain to me were just that. They were just concepts. They would have to use things that were happening, like that have already happened, situations almost, to
Hmm.
explain certain concepts. So you could to make me feel a certain way to explain what they were trying to say. Like we just don't have words for this stuff. So they'll
Hmm.
use images and I just feel emotion and feelings to explain how they, whatever they're going through.
No, but
Um,
like the one true God has been trying to reach us forever. And
yeah,
every time the one true God tells us all you need to do is worship me and love me by being love to each other, we reject that and we put rules and stipulations on it and change it into something that looks more human.
right, exactly. Yeah. To be honest, I think we're like infants, or maybe even better yet, terrible twos, like a toddler
Yeah.
throwing a temper tantrum, right?
Yeah.
We're hitting people and taking toys and, you
That's the
know, uh,
leaders of the world.
right. But I think eventually the people who have, who aren't in that kind of world, that world of the elite that are angry and give me greed and, vanity and all that. The people who, like you and me, who are just, sitting down and talking about consciousness and love and understanding and becoming better people, like the more that people are normal people like us get into that, just wanting to love more and hate less. Like we are slowly building this future. Like conversations like this are building that future of where heaven is on earth, like where we decide that we no longer need certain things in this existence anymore. We don't,
Yeah.
out with the old and in with the new,
Yeah. I mean, there's more people on the world that don't lead it than there are that do. And if everybody could realize the potential that they have and the God that is within them to be love to each other, like it would happen like that.
Right. So actually, since I had that experience, we had moved to Mississippi for a short time where we actually bought our camper. I had started having like these flashback experiences from my NDE where like, things would start talking to me through my phone again, or but it wasn't as intense, but there was this one moment where it was intense. And it was so random. I was sitting there and I was cooking up some potato wedges like frying them on a pan. And my son and my wife are behind me and they're talking or whatever. And I was talking with them. And then all of a sudden, I just got hit with uh, the only way I can explain it is like the most amount of love I've ever felt in my entire life. But it was love for myself and I couldn't explain it, and I started just crying while I'm cooking potatoes, man. Like I started crying. I turned around,
Yeah.
my wife, she's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, I all I could get out was God is in this room right now, because like they were cutting up and laughing and playing. I was cooking dinner, like I was in my element. Like, my family's happy, I'm happy, we're close one with nature, like everything's good. We don't have anything to worry about. And in that moment I allowed myself to love myself to a degree that I didn't even know was possible. It brought me to tears, it brought me to my knees. And I was just like, what is this? Like, what is this feeling that I've never felt before?
That feeling God is in this room, was that like an electric feeling all over your body, but filled with like elation and love at the same time?
I felt it in my heart. You know what I mean? Like I felt
Yeah.
it like it was expanding from my heart. Like I just felt,
Yeah, that's the feeling that I was trying to describe.
yeah, I just felt free.
Yeah.
Like I just was like, I was like, wait a minute. And it was like I just had this epiphany that, oh wait, I can just love myself like this. Like I'm allowed to just love myself. Like people do that. Like it was wild. After I had that experience, one morning, I woke up and my wife was working at this call center. Basically, she worked from home, but she had to go to this to Baton Rouge from Mississippi to go change out her computer and bring the new computer back to Mississippi. And
Sure.
yeah, so we were about to leave to go do that, and then all of a sudden, I was standing in the middle of the living room, and I just started feeling really weird. And then I look at my son, or my wife said, no, no, no. Yeah, my wife said something and then ran to the room to go get something. And when she ran to the room, she like slammed the door behind her. But I looked at it as she pulled it, but then I started looking away as it was actually closing. And it was like, as it entered my peripheral, it just went like, and then slowed down in like slow motion. I was like, what the hell was that? And I just got overwhelmed with this crazy, weird, trippy feeling. And then I was like, started talking, like, okay, spirit, like, if you can hear me, God, whatever, like, what's going on? This is like, I can tell you're trying to get my attention here. And then my son, who was on the couch over here, he's rocking back and forth. And I would look at him directly and he'd be rocking. And I'd start looking away and he'd go, and just start like slowly rocking in the chair. And then I
Yeah.
look back to him and he'd go, and then he'd start rocking full speed again. And I was like, what is going on? Here's the crazy part. I started mumbling things to God under my breath, and my son started answering these questions that he could not hear in real time, to the point where I
Wow.
stopped eventually after a couple, like a few, 3 or 4 questions. I stopped actually muttering them under my breath and started speaking them at full volume because I was like, oh, obviously he's meant to answer these questions for me.
Yeah, somebody's in on this.
Right. So, and it was kind of like I just had this understanding that whatever this thing was that I was experiencing in that moment, my child, who was 6 or 7 years old at the time, lived there. Like that's what his reality was. He experienced time different. Like, you know what I mean? And he was asking me
Well, yeah.
questions that was like my wife was like all freaked out because she was anxious about like getting driving and all this, and so she was kind of freaking out, like trying to get out the house. And he was looking at me, just being like, we don't have to go do this. We could just go play instead. And like I was like, like usually I would be like, no, we got to go do this. But I was like, he's right. Like we are just making all these, like, in a way he's like right. We could just go play and like put, not worry about this thing that's causing us all stress that we created for ourselves. Like it was like
Hmm.
he was answering like very, it's hard to explain, but I asked him like, what are we doing here? He was like, I don't know. This is a game we play. And I was like, okay. So like, who are you? And I asked my son. He's like, I don't know. You and mom created me, I guess. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And I was like, what are we doing here? And he's like, I think we're just here to love each other. It kept happening. It was almost like, yeah, like I would think of something and then bam, it would happen right after that. You know what I mean? Uh, they even said something along the lines of like, this is like the second time this has happened this week where you've entered this state. And they were like, what do you want your reality to be like, basically? And I remember being like, well, can't everything just be perfect? Like I literally said that under my breath. And right as I said that, my wife was like, oh, look, Finn, the shorts I was looking for, they just magically appeared out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, I get it. Like, if everything was perfect all the time, it would feel inauthentic and boring. Like, what if every time you lost something, you're just like, oh, bam, there it is. Like, oh, look at this
Yeah.
thing. I'm hungry, and like, poof, a slice of diet cheesecake, it just or whatever. Like, what if everything you wanted you actually got? It would feel fake. It would feel inauthentic. It would feel as if it wasn't very real. And that's the point they were trying to get to me when they were like, I had my wife be like, oh, these pants just magically appeared out of nowhere, you know? And then I was like, okay, well, if it can't be that, why don't you just like leave it how it is? But as I go through this life, just make it get easier and easier and easier. And they were like, basically, that's what we were already doing for you, and
Hmm.
I was like, oh shit. So like, you already knew what I wanted, and you knew how to show me that I didn't want what I thought I wanted. That was crazy. Like that literally brought me to my knees. Like, what is going on? Like, I remember dropping to my knees and being like, what is this? Like, where is this coming
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
And I was completely sober at that time. Completely sober.
This has been really interesting for me, and I really appreciate you telling me your story, because I mean, I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff. I've listened to hundreds of NDE stories from people. I listen to paranormal podcasts. I guess we
Right.
call it that because we don't want to say that it could be real. I don't know. But no, I'm just like, I'm honored that you came on, and Austin, I hopefully we can keep in touch beyond this, because I want to hear about the rest of your story too.
Yeah, yeah, man. I'm very thankful you took this seriously. People, I could tell people this, and most people will be like, "I don't think you're crazy, and I believe that you believe these things happen to you, but I don't believe you." You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
And
mean, we're probably going to get a lot of comments just like, it's demons,
right,
but
right.
whatever.
And in some sense, it might be demons for those people who believe it's demons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that's
Yeah.
what their belief system, believes. I don't know.
I mean, I
It's
believe there are evil entities, but like
of
you also
course.
have the power within you to be like, go away.
Right, right. And they say that the name of Jesus is a wonderful weapon to have, against those kind of powers. And what I think of, what you're calling demons, I think we're talking about the same thing. We're just using different names to describe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
good entities and there's bad entities. There's
Well,
entities
all words are human made, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
So I think we're just using different names for the same thing. I think it's
Semantics.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, I'm super, super glad to tell this. This is what I want to do with my life now. I want to tell my story to people, who are open to it. And I want to work with people who have gone through these kinds of experiences and feel like they have no one to talk to about it. And I want to, invite the world to heal and love and show them there's this third option after Democrat or Republican called loving each other,
Yes.
being undivided, uh,
Yeah.
and I think it's, I think, yeah, I think people would be happy to hear it if they better understood, some of the words we used, and just under.
Definitely.
So, but yeah, man, it's
I love it, man.
for sure.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, hit the subscribe button. Also, as always, Milty don't quit, and you don't either. Love you guys.